December 2, 1993. Rifle shots echoed across a Medellín rooftop as Pablo Escobar fell, blood pooling on the terracotta tiles. The world's most notorious drug lord was dead. His empire crumbled. His billions were seized. His mansions demolished. But everyone forgot about Hacienda Naples, his private zoo in the Colombian jungle, and they especially forgot about the 4 hippopotamuses lounging in his artificial lakes. That oversight would become one of the strangest ecological disasters in modern history. Today, 30 years later, those 4 hippos have become 130, maybe 150. Nobody knows the exact number anymore. They've spread across Colombia's Magdalena River basin, an area larger than Portugal. They're attacking fishermen, killing livestock, terrorizing riverside communities, destroying ecosystems that evolved for millions of years without Africa's deadliest mammal. And the Colombian government, they can't stop them. This is the story of how a dead drug dealer's exotic pets became an unstoppable invasion, and why the solution might be more disturbing than the problem itself. The Narco Zoo. To understand this disaster, you have to understand Pablo Escobar's ego. In the 1980s, Escobar wasn't just Colombia's cocaine king. He was one of the richest men on earth. Forbes estimated his wealth at $30 billion. He owned a fleet of planes, a private army, politicians in his pocket, and like all tyrants who have conquered their world, he wanted to play God. So he built Hacienda Naples, 7,000 acres of Colombian countryside transformed into his personal paradise. Swimming pools with underwater bars, dinosaur sculptures greeting visitors at the entrance, a bullfighting ring, an airport for his drug-running fleet, and at the center of it all, a private zoo that would make any corrupt dictator jealous. Escobar smuggled animals from across the globe: elephants, giraffes, zebras, ostriches, kangaroos, rare birds. And in 1981, he acquired something truly special: 1 male and 3 female hippopotamuses, illegally imported from a New Orleans zoo. The hippos cost him thousands to transport. Building their habitat cost even more. But Escobar didn't care about money. He cared about power. And what says I'm untouchable more than having Africa's most dangerous animal swimming in your backyard lake? The local peasants would watch from the fence as Escobar walked among his collection. Children pressed their faces against the bars, staring at creatures they'd only seen in books. To them, Hacienda Naples was Disneyland and the Museum of Natural History combined, a magical place where the impossible happened. But then came December 2, 1993. The day everything changed. The escape nobody noticed. When Colombian police killed Escobar on that rooftop, his empire evaporated overnight. Associates fled. Guards abandoned their posts. The mansion was looted within hours, paintings, furniture, even bathroom fixtures stolen by locals who'd lived in poverty while Escobar bathed in gold-plated tubs. The government seized the property, but they had no idea what to do with a drug lord's zoo. Most animals were easy to handle. The elephants and giraffes went to legitimate zoos. Birds were released or rehomed. The exotic cats were euthanized, too dangerous to relocate. But the hippos, they were in a lake, a big lake, with no fences high enough or strong enough to contain 3-ton animals. So officials made a decision that would haunt Colombia for decades. They left them there. What's the worst that could happen? Someone probably said. They're in a lake, they'll stay in the lake. That person had clearly never studied hippopotamus behavior. Hippos are territorial, aggressive, and deceptively mobile. Despite weighing up to 4 tons, they can run at speeds of 30 mph on land. They can hold their breath for 5 minutes underwater. They walk along river bottoms like aquatic tanks. And most importantly, they travel. In the wild, hippo populations are controlled by predators, disease, drought, and territorial wars with other hippo groups. But Colombia had none of that. No crocodiles large enough to threaten a hippo. No lions. No droughts in the tropical lowlands. The Magdalena River basin was an endless buffet of grass and freshwater with zero natural predators. For hippos, Colombia wasn't a foreign land. It was paradise. Within 5 years, the original 4 had produced their first calf. Then another. And another. Researchers who visited Hacienda Naples in the late 1990s reported seeing hippos wandering outside the estate, grazing on riverbanks miles away. Local fishermen began reporting strange encounters, something massive surfacing near their boats, enormous tracks in the mud. One man claimed a water cow charged his canoe, nearly capsizing it. The government dismissed these reports. Hippos were still just a curiosity, an amusing footnote to the Escobar legend. Besides, Colombia had bigger problems. FARC guerrillas, paramilitary groups, continued drug violence. But by 2006, scientists started paying attention. And what they found was terrifying. The invasion accelerates. Dr. Natalie Castilblanco Martinez was one of the first biologists to study Escobar's hippos systematically. What she discovered should have triggered immediate government action. The hippo population was doubling every 8 years, far faster than in Africa, where environmental pressures keep growth in check. Colombian hippos were breeding younger, producing more calves, and living longer than their African cousins. Why? Because Colombia gave them everything they needed. The Magdalena River system offered unlimited food sources. The tropical climate meant no seasonal stress. Grass grew year-round. Water temperatures stayed warm. And without predators, hippos didn't need to expend energy on vigilance or territorial defense against lions and crocodiles. They were thriving in a way they couldn't in Africa. By 2009, the population had reached roughly 20 individuals. They'd spread across multiple rivers and lakes, claiming territories 30 miles from Hacienda Naples. Fishermen reported aggressive encounters becoming more frequent. Farmers found their crops trampled, fences destroyed. And then came the first death. A fisherman in the town of Puerto Triunfo was working his nets just after dawn. He didn't see the hippo until it was too late. 3 tons of muscle and rage erupted from the water, jaws wide enough to snap a human in half. The man survived, barely, but spent months in the hospital with catastrophic injuries. The government finally acted. In 2009, they sent a team to hunt and kill one particularly aggressive male hippo known locally as Pepe. Military sharpshooters tracked him for days through the jungle. When they finally cornered him near a remote lake, they opened fire with high-caliber rifles. It took 11 bullets to bring him down. The public reaction was immediate and furious. Animal rights activists protested. International media portrayed Colombia as barbaric for killing Escobar's innocent legacy. Children who'd visited Hacienda Naples, now a tourist attraction, cried over Pepe's death. The government backed down. No more hippos would be killed. That decision may have been the worst mistake of all. The ecological nightmare. While politicians debated and activists protested, the hippos continued their conquest of Colombia. And they weren't just taking up space, they were fundamentally altering the ecosystem. Hippos are what ecologists call ecosystem engineers. In Africa, they shape their environment in profound ways. Their dung fertilizes rivers, feeding fish populations. Their grazing creates pathways that other animals use. Their wallowing behaviors create microhabitats. But Africa evolved with hippos over millions of years. Colombia didn't. When hippos defecate in water, which they do constantly, they release massive amounts of nutrients. In African rivers adapted to this, it creates balance. In Colombian rivers, it causes toxic algae blooms. Oxygen levels plummet. Fish die in massive numbers. The entire aquatic food web collapses. Their grazing patterns devastate native plant species that didn't evolve to withstand hippo-feeding behavior. They create wallows in wetlands, destroying habitats for endangered species like the spectacled caiman and various turtle species. And then there's the direct danger. Hippos kill approximately 500 people per year in Africa, more than lions, crocodiles, and elephants combined. They're territorial, unpredictable, and equipped with teeth that can crush a watermelon like paper. In Colombia, where people have no cultural knowledge of how to coexist with them, attacks are becoming more common. Schools near hippo territories now keep children inside during certain hours. Fishermen carry air horns and flares. One town built a concrete barrier along their section of river. Hippos walked around it. The situation was spiraling out of control. But the real horror, this was just the beginning. The population bomb. In 2020, researchers published a terrifying projection. If nothing changed, Colombia would have 1,400 hippos by 2034. Let that sink in. 1,400 hippopotamuses in a country where they don't belong, spreading across river systems that connect to the Caribbean Sea. Scientists began modeling worst-case scenarios. Scenario 1: Caribbean colonization. Hippos reach coastal areas and establish populations in brackish water estuaries. They're seen occasionally in the Caribbean. Some populations in West Africa live in saltwater environments. Colombia's hippos could potentially island hop to Central America. Scenario 2: Species collapse. The Magdalena River Basin hosts 140 species of fish, many found nowhere else on Earth. Continued hippo invasion could drive dozens to extinction within a generation. The ecological ripple effects would be catastrophic. Scenario 3: Human casualty event. A hippo attacks a school bus or a crowded river ferry. The death toll that would result from a full hippo charge on unprotected civilians doesn't bear thinking about. None of these scenarios are hypothetical anymore. They're predictions based on current population growth and territorial expansion. The Colombian government finally acknowledged they had a crisis. But by then, it might have been too late. The impossible solutions. So how do you stop an invasion of 130-plus hippos spread across thousands of square miles of river and jungle? The obvious answer is culling, systematic hunting to reduce population. But after the Pepe incident, that option became politically radioactive. International pressure, domestic outrage, and concerns about Colombia's image made lethal management nearly impossible. Instead, authorities tried alternatives. Option 1: Sterilization. In 2021, veterinarians began a program to chemically castrate male hippos. The procedure requires tranquilizing a 4-ton animal in water, extraordinarily dangerous, then administering a drug that permanently stops sperm production. The problems: each sterilization costs $50,000. It requires a team of specialists. It only works on males. Females continue breeding with any remaining intact males, and you need to sterilize hundreds of them to make a dent. They've managed to sterilize approximately 40 hippos so far. Meanwhile, roughly 20-30 new calves are born each year. Option 2: Contraception. Scientists proposed shooting hippos with darts containing long-term contraceptives. This would prevent females from conceiving without requiring capture. The challenges: you need to dart every female repeatedly forever. Miss one, and she produces calves that grow up to breed. The darts sometimes bounce off thick hippo hide, and tracking 70-plus adult females across a region the size of several countries is logistically impossible with current resources. Option 3: Relocation. Why not catch them and send them to zoos or sanctuaries? Because catching a hippo is borderline impossible. You'd need massive cranes, specialized transport containers, permits from receiving countries, and months of veterinary preparation per animal. One accidental death during transport would trigger another international incident. India and the Philippines have expressed interest in taking some hippos. Mexico considered it, but the logistics and costs are so prohibitive that only a handful have been relocated. Asterisk option 4, fencing. Build barriers to contain them. Hippos laugh at fences. They weigh 4 tons. They can bite through chain link. They climb embankments. One study calculated that containing Colombia's hippos would require hundreds of miles of reinforced concrete barriers, costing billions. Money Colombia doesn't have. Every solution is either too expensive, too slow, or too controversial. And while experts debate, the hippos keep breeding. The human cost. For the people living in hippo territory, this isn't an abstract ecological debate. It's their daily reality. Maria Rodriguez, a fisher from Puerto Triunfo, described her experience to reporters. "We used to fish at night when it was cooler. Now, never. The hippos are most active after dark. Last month my neighbor's son was fishing by lamplight. He heard breathing, heavy breathing right behind him. He ran. The hippo followed him to the riverbank, stopped only when he reached the village lights." Schools have changed their schedules. In the town of Doratl, children are forbidden from playing near the water during certain months, peak hippo breeding season, when they're most aggressive. Local economies are suffering. Tourism operators who once offered river tour now avoid sections where hippos gather. Fishermen report catches dropping as fish populations collapse under the ecological pressure. Property values near known hippo territories have plummeted. And there's a psychological toll. Living with the knowledge that a 4-ton killing machine might be in your backyard, that your children aren't safe near the water, that your government either can't or won't protect you, it creates an atmosphere of helpless anxiety. Some locals have started taking matters into their own hands. Reports of illegal hippo poisonings have surfaced. One farmer allegedly dug a pit trap after a hippo destroyed his crops 3 seasons in a row. The animal survived and became more aggressive. Vigilante hunting parties venture out at night, though killing a hippo with anything short of military weapons is nearly impossible. The government threatens legal action against anyone harming the hippos. They're technically an invasive species, but they're also considered part of Escobar's estate, making them protected historical artifacts. The absurdity would be comical if it weren't so tragic. Meanwhile, another calf was born last week. The twisted legacy. Here's the darkest irony of this entire disaster. Pablo Escobar is more present in Colombia today than he was at the height of his power. His mansion is now a tourist attraction. His hippos are celebrities, featured in documentaries, news articles, viral videos. Children wear Save the Hippos t-shirts. International activists rally to their defense. The animals have become symbols, mascots, cultural icons. Escobar killed thousands. He bombed planes. He assassinated presidential candidates. He turned Colombia into a war zone, but his hippos, they're adorable. They're Instagram famous. They're innocent creatures who don't deserve to be punished for their owners' crimes. And so Escobar wins, even from the grave. Every dollar Colombia spends on hippo management is a dollar not spent on education, healthcare, or rebuilding communities destroyed by narco-violence. Every international news story about the hippos reminds the world of Colombia's most shameful era. Every debate about whether to kill them divides the nation. The hippos aren't just an ecological problem. They're a psychological scar that won't heal. Dr. David Echeverry, a biologist who studied the invasion for over a decade, put it bluntly. These hippos are Escobar's final act of terrorism. He's been dead for 30 years, and he's still destabilizing Colombia, still forcing us to spend resources on his chaos, still making us look incompetent to the world. And the worst part, there's no good ending. The future nobody WNTS two-face. Let's be honest about where this is heading. Option 1. Colombia continues current policies. Sterilization and contraception programs crawl forward at enormous expense, barely slowing population growth. By 2040, there are over 1,000 hippos. Multiple human fatalities have occurred. Fish species have gone extinct. International pressure mounts for Colombia to do something, but nobody offers realistic solutions or funding. Eventually, after enough deaths and ecological collapse, Colombia is forced to authorize mass culling. By then, it requires military-level operations. Hundreds of hippos are killed in a campaign that traumatizes a generation and becomes an international scandal worse than Pepe's death ever was. Option 2. Colombia takes action now. Authorizes professional culling before the population becomes unmanageable. Faces immediate international condemnation. Loses tourism revenue. Becomes the villain in countless articles about killing cute animals. But saves its ecosystem, protects its citizens, ends the problem before it becomes unsolvable. Option 3. Nothing happens. The government continues to delay, hoping for a miracle solution that doesn't exist. The hippos spread farther. More attacks occur. Eventually, they reach the Caribbean coast and establish populations that spread beyond Colombia's borders. What happens when Panama, Venezuela, or Central American nations start reporting hippos in their rivers? When this becomes a hemispheric crisis? The truth is there are no good options. There never were. This is a problem that should have been solved in 1993 within days of Escobar's death, when there were only 4 hippos, when containment was possible, when culling wouldn't require an army. But Colombia didn't, the world didn't, and now everyone is paying the price for that oversight. The question nobody wants to answer. So here's what it comes down to. Is the life of an invasive hippo worth more than the Colombian fishermen it might kill? More than the native species it's driving to extinction? More than the communities it's displacing? When we post "Save the Hippos" on social media, are we thinking about Maria Rodriguez, who can't fish safely anymore? About the schoolchildren who can't play by the river? About the fish species that exist nowhere else on Earth and will vanish in our lifetime because of these animals? Or are we just thinking about how cute hippos look when they yawn? The uncomfortable reality is that nature isn't a Disney movie. Conservation sometimes means making brutal choices. Protecting native ecosystems sometimes requires removing invasive species, even charismatic ones. Africa has hippos. Africa evolved with hippos. Africa's ecosystems need hippos. Colombia did not. Colombia does not. Colombia is being destroyed by hippos. And yet the world demands Colombia find a humane solution, as if there's a kind way to reverse 3 decades of ecological colonization, as if sterilization programs that have barely dented the population are working, as if wishful thinking will stop one of nature's most aggressive animals from continuing to breed and expand. Meanwhile, every day that passes, another calf is conceived, another section of river is claimed, another fisherman risks his life. This is Pablo Escobar's true legacy, not the cocaine empire or the violence, but this. A problem that grows exponentially, costs millions, divides the nation, and has no solution anyone is willing to implement. The hippos are winning, and they don't even know they're in a war. Epilogue, the latest update. As of last month, Colombian environmental authorities announced a new strategy, partnering with international conservation groups to explore fertility-controlled DART technology and remote monitoring systems. Translation: more studies, more delays, more money spent on solutions that might work in 5 or 10 years if everything goes perfectly. Meanwhile, biologists estimate the current population at somewhere between 130 and 160 individuals. Maybe more. Hippos are excellent at hiding in river systems, and nobody has the resources for a complete census. A farmer in Puerto Barrio reported finding 3 new hippos in his section of river last week. He'd never seen them before. Another town is building a secondary school and had to relocate the site because it was too close to known hippo territory. The Ministry of Environment held a press conference announcing they've successfully sterilized 5 more males. 5 down, hundreds to go. And in Hacienda Naples, now a tourist attraction called Parque Temático Hacienda Naples, visitors can take guided tour to see the hippos. They paddle out in boats, cameras ready, while guides explain the fascinating story of how these animals came to Colombia. Children squeal with delight when a hippo surfaces. Parents take photos. Tour operators collect fees. Nobody mentions that 3 miles downriver, those same hippos are dismantling an ecosystem millions of years old. Nobody talks about the fisherman who can't work anymore because he's too afraid. Nobody discusses the species extinction happening in slow motion beneath the water's surface. Because the truth is too ugly, too complicated, too expensive to fix. So Colombia smiles for the cameras, charges admission, and hopes that maybe, somehow, this problem will solve itself. It won't. The hippos are here to stay. And 30 years from now, some other writer will be documenting Colombia's population of 1,500 hippos, wondering how the world let it get this bad. Wondering why nobody acted when they had the chance. Wondering what Pablo Escobar would think if he knew his pets had become more infamous than his cocaine empire. Probably he'd be laughing. Somewhere in hell, the drug lord who wanted to be unforgettable found a way to haunt Colombia forever. 4 hippos. That's all it took. 4 hippos to create a disaster that might never end. The end, or is it?